Well, welcome, folks. I trust this is all working. This is new to me, um, and I'm sure happy to be here and to support Folkworks' great new endeavor. It's going to be a website, and it's going to be useful to musicians everywhere. And really happy to support them. Also here, noting that it's 9/11, so I want to thank all first responders and firefighters. We had some really horrific fires near me, and people I know and love lost a lot. And one firefighter I know was up for 30 hours straight. So send a few notes out to them. And great thanks. I'm going to play some music from that I picked up over my rambling life, and I think I will start with something from. Well, it's interesting. These are a couple of tunes from Quebec, but they're out from the Gaspé Peninsula, where there's a lot of Irish influence. And the first tune it's actually the Quebecers call it, the Gaspésians, they call it Real Ben Vieux. And in Ireland, it's Roaring Mary. And it's got a nice Quebec version. And then we'll do something that comes from Douglastown in the extreme tip of the Gaspé Peninsula. It's from a man named Erskine Morris. And a lot of Irish people settled there after the Revolutionary War. And I guess they didn't want to be without a king. So this first one is Real Ben View, and then Tommy Rooney's Jig. And by jig, I don't mean da 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 jig. It's actually a jig, step dancing tune. That's a fun one to play. I really like that one. Well, I got pulled out 3 different fiddles, and I hope this is working. Let's see. That was a fiddle I got last year, 2 years ago. This fiddle I had at Fiddle Tunes with me, and this is my fiddle I've had for a long time. Love this fiddle, and I made a mistake of putting it on a piano where I thought it was very secure, and the piano player was a fierce man, and he evidently motated the fiddle off the piano, and it came apart, and I was heartbroken. And great fiddle repair person up in Corvallis fixed it for me, but it took a long time. And meantime, I had to get a fiddle, and I was talking to who was it? Another fiddle player, and he was telling me about Japanese fiddles from the 20s by a man named Masakichi Suzuki. And he said, if you can ever find one, they're not very expensive, but boy, do they sound good. They might be ugly, but they sound good. And so I went and looked on eBay 10 minutes later, and there was one. It cost me $200. And it was there in a week. And I was thinking, this is great. I'm going to have a fiddle to play. And it arrived, and in shipping, it must have gotten bumped because the neck was on it too. But luckily, another friend of mine close by my house put it together in one day, and I had a fiddle. And it's been a great fiddle for that kind of music. Anyway, I'm going to play. I'll play some more reels. Maybe I'll play a jig first, then some reels. Then a Monahan jig. I played that for a while. And then, what's that other one? Well, I'll tell you the names later when they come to me. The last one, I believe, is Patty Ryan's Dream. Well, when my wife and I was traveling to Quebec, we met some incredible people. One of the greatest was a wonderful fiddle player, great raconteur, great storyteller. Um, he was such a good storyteller. He would tell these stories in French, which I didn't speak, but I still could understand the stories. His name's Yvon Mimo, and we were lucky enough to accompany him on his first record in many years, which he made. He had a great history as a fiddle player. When he was a young man, he grew up in a family where all music was looked down upon. But he spent a summer at a lumberjack camp where there was a fiddler, and he was gobsmacked. And he memorized that man's fiddle so much so that when he got home, he found some wood out from the pigsty. It was maple, and he carved himself a fiddle, and it's a fiddle that he still plays. I'm going to play this tune that he still plays on that fiddle today, and he's in his 80s. And he had to hide it from his family because they looked down on music so much. But he'd sneak off at night, get his hiding place, go off and play for dances. One night they played a dance that was recorded and brought on the radio. And he got home, and his father called him in and said, "Yvon, they introduced a fiddle player with your name. That wasn't you, was it?" And he said, "I can't tell if I thought it was." And he said they had a rather stern discussion. Anyway, obviously he had to stop playing for maybe 1-2 days, who knows. But a few weeks later, again, he was out played on the radio, came back, and his father was awake and said, "Yvon, that was you." And Yvon said, "Yes, Father, it was." He said, "You're not going to quit, are you?" "No, Father, I'm not." And his father said, "Well, I suppose I should teach you the tunes that my father taught me." And he went and got a fiddle out of some dusty closet and started teaching Yvon. Anyway, one of Yvon's signature tunes is this one. It's the reel pendu. It's the hangman's reel. And I'll try and play some of his variations for this tune. Well, this fiddle that I've been playing, I got from a man named Jim Wimper, wonderful violin maker down in Santa Barbara. And I've always been interested in Norwegian music, and I like drones of all kinds, bagpipes, fiddle drone music. And when we were at a festival once, he had a big overcoat, and he opened the overcoat, and he had this fiddle hanging, and he said, "Hey, I think you need to take this with you." And he was a great salesman. I took the fiddle, and it never left me. And it reminded me, I played Yvonne's tune on it because it reminds me of Yvonne's fiddle that he had made. He couldn't remember the scroll how it went, and so he put a goat head on it. And this is not a goat head; it's a lovely little maiden. So I'm going to tell you another story that comes from the Scandinavian, or it's reminiscent of the Scandinavian tradition. In the old days in Scandinavia on the farms, they would eagerly await the arrival of the fiddler. There would be a fiddler in a very district that would come around to the various farms, and he would bring the news, and he'd bring the latest tunes, and he'd stay for a fortnight enjoying hospitality, play every night, and people would dance, and it was a great time. Well, one of these farms, there was a young lady, and she was in love with the sound of the fiddle. She dreamed of playing the fiddle, but there was a problem, and that was that things were conservative in those days, and the fiddler, whenever she asked about learning to play the fiddle, he'd laugh, and he'd say, "You know the way you learn to play the fiddle. You take a joint of meat to the nearest waterfall, and you throw it into the pool by the waterfall. And if it's a big joint of meat, the fossagrim and the spirit of the water will actually give you the gift of music. But if you're not very generous with your meat, well, he'll just give you the gift of tuning. And you also know that if a girl goes anywhere, they disappear and often are never seen." And with that, he would turn back to playing. And, this irked her so much. She wanted to play so badly. Well, after one of the visits, she didn't take it anymore. And after the chores, mid-afternoon, she went off to the smokehouse. She picked out the biggest ham she didn't care, and she trudged up the path to the wall, slung it into the pool. And it was only then she heard and she looked over, and there was the handsomest man she'd ever seen. And he held his hand to her, and it was as though that hand was a magnet, and it pulled her own hand, and she reached out and at the last second pulled her hand back and said, "I want to learn to play the fiddle." And he narrowed his eyes and then opened them again in that fetching way, held his hand out again, and said, "I'll teach you to play the fiddle." And she reached her hand out again, and then she pulled it back at the last minute and said, "I want to come back." And now his eyes narrowed. And he looked at her, and finally he held his hand out again. He said, "You can come back." She took his hand. They walked this little path that went actually through the water, came out, not in a cave, but in another world. It was a beautiful world. And as they talked, and they just enjoyed each other's company so much. They arrived at this little farm, and he said, "I've got to do a little work." She said, "I'll help you." And they worked together hand in glove all day. And that night, he played the fiddle, and magical. It was as though the notes would hang in the air so that she could understand how fit together. It was the best night of music she experienced. Next day, they worked together. Next night, it went on in this blissful rhythm until one day she came in, and he had two fiddles on the table. He said, "This other fiddle is for you, and I would hope that it could be a wedding present. You'd marry me." And she tried to think of any reason why she shouldn't, but since she could remember nothing before they met, she said, and they married and began a wonderful life. It wasn't perfect. No life is perfect, but it was a great life. She gave birth to 3 different children, and they seemed to grow so fast, and they were so cool. Before long, it was the perfect number of people, because the 4 people can dance and 1 can play, and they would switch around. And the children grew so fast, it seemed like no time before they were gone. And they moved far enough away that weren't always around asking for babysitting, but not so far that they were never seen. And it was a beautiful life. They grew old together. Seasons passed. One day she looked up at her husband, who, truth to be told, only has a few flicks of gray in his hair, whereas she had become bent and white, but with that same wonderful smile she'd had. And she felt something, and she called for her husband, and he came over, and he knew too, and he took her hand, and they walked back into the cabin, and she laid down and looked at him and just thanked him for the most beautiful life a person could ever want. And she saw for the first time ever a little trace of a tear in his eye. And she took her last breath. And then she opened her eyes. She was by the pool, by the waterfall where they'd met so long before. She got up and looked into the pool and saw her reflection. She was a young girl. She was the same age. And there at her feet, there was a fiddle. She picked it up, walked in amazement down the path into where her family was just sitting down to their afternoon meal. They looked at her, wondering. She hadn't been gone at all to them, but they did notice the fiddle. They said, "What's that?" And she opened her mouth, and you know how sometimes you have a dream that is so big, it's as big as a lifetime. You try to tell someone, there's just not enough room for it all to come out. So she stared at them and then picked up the fiddle. Well, that story is called The Gift. And now I'm going to finish off with a little bagpipe tune. So please remember to donate and be generous. Folkworks is a fantastic organization. I'll play you a little Galician bagpipe tune. If you love it, let it inspire you to donate. If you keep playing all night until you donate. Thank you all. Thank you, Steve and Lita. Take care.
And thank you, Kevin. This is Steve from Folkworks, and I just wanted to welcome you all and thank you for coming. Sorry for the sound quality, and well, actually the video quality sounded really good, at least from my perspective. But we're doing this every night, and tomorrow night, Mike Kelly, who's an Irish fiddler from the LA area, is going to be on, and it's going to be great. And so join us again. And remember, we're doing this all to raise funds for the Folkworks website that we're working on, the new Folkworks website. And the best thing to do is to go to paypal.me/Folkworks, or you can just go to the folkworks.org website and donate there, or go to Facebook. Anyway, thanks for contributing, those who have. We're getting close to our goals, and every penny, well, every dollar helps. Thank you so much. Have a good night, you guys.